This episode with Jordan Kelliher is a complete how to buy a business masterclass. How much is a business worth? What's the revenue multipliers you should be using to evaluate a business?
You could say $200,000 times 4 is $800,000. So they're putting this around a 4 multiple.
We even pull up BizBuySell, looking at real listings and figuring out what's a good one, what's a bad one, and so much more.
So this is the average multiple that was used for businesses in building and construction, finance services, 2.45, maybe a CPA firm sold, right?
It seems like a lot of people are trying to buy these businesses, obviously, to replace their regular day job income, hopefully from an absentee level. Is that actually realistic? Like, how many people are actually doing that?
Yeah, it's realistic.
Jordan, thanks so much for jumping on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate you reaching out, letting me be on here.
Buying businesses, I think whoever hasn't binge watched Cody Sanchez yet is not from Earth. But buying businesses is definitely one of the hottest topics today. And I ran across your page and you're sharing some really good stuff. For people who don't know who Jordan is, can you paint the picture? Who is Jordan?
Yeah, so I actually started off working like the blue collar industry. I worked in the freight and logistics industry as a freight broker. So just getting product from point A to point B, the fastest and cheapest route. But spent a lot of my time reading about finances and economics, and that's where the interest came. I didn't grow up with a ton of money, and so I was always really driven to kind of figure out money and the terminology. And so that's what kind of kept leading me down the next path until I stumbled upon business brokerage and was able to kind of somehow get my way into that industry with someone in Dallas, Texas. And so I picked everything up and moved here and started working as a business broker for several years. And, I think if to sum it up in that 60 seconds, I think I just really like to see personal progress. And so wherever it takes me with a change in industries, pursuing something in particular, I think that's really what it all kind of boils down to, is just seeing personal progress in my own life.
Yeah, I mean, the business acquisition world is very interesting. I feel like the big companies, obviously, you see the big headline of so-and-so acquired this huge company for hundreds of millions of dollars, which is awesome. But there's a lot of changing hands of small businesses, of these mom and pop businesses that people don't know how, and it's a lot more accessible than people think. And I don't see that much information like readily available on that either.
Yeah, and that's a great point. And I think that's what scares people a little bit, because you pull up the Wall Street Journal and you'll see major corporation buys major corporation for $500 million. It's a mergers and acquisitions, and just all this terminology and big numbers freaks people out, I think. But it's the same game, the same thing happens on the smaller level, the middle market level. And, that's why we brought up Cody Sanchez. I like that she kind of trailblazes this path as far as information, because the same game is applied for these businesses, especially, between $1 and $5 million businesses, because that's where you can utilize an SBA loan to acquire some of these businesses. And so, just getting the information out there and letting people realize it's not these big headlines that you see in, the Wall Street Journal or something like that. The same thing is applied to the smaller level for individual people who want to go out and do individual acquisitions, or if you own a small business and you want to buy maybe a smaller one in the neighborhood area, or the neighboring neighborhood, I should say. That is something you can do. That's something I help people do, and that's something I've seen a lot of people do. So that same game is applied to the smaller middle market businesses right in your own neighborhood. And that's kind of part of what I'm doing, is getting that information out there and explaining how to do that.
I love it. And so I'm going to ask a lot of rookie questions here, which I'm sure you probably get the most of all the time, especially, former broker and consultant now.
Sure.
How do you even buy a business? Like, just walk me through, like, on a quick macro perspective, what are all the steps that needs to happen?
So it's somewhat similar to real estate, as far as, going through having a broker kind of walk you through the phases and the steps. The timeline's a little bit different. It usually takes, I usually say 6 to 9 months to actually start and finish the deal process. But how you go about buying it, obviously you need to have certain qualifications. If you're going to finance the deal with an SBA loan, you have to have a certain credit and certain liquid funds and sometimes collateral. And then along with some business experience in that industry, or transferable management skills as well. But you just start out by, and I think we'll probably look at this, going through a website like BizBuySell, which is kind of the Zillow for real estate, if you will. and you just start scrolling that way. You have to inquire on a business and start the conversations with the seller and the seller's broker. And I think one of the most important things too, that's a little bit different than real estate, is that you need to really lean on other people as far as CPAs, attorneys, people who are experts in their field, because you will need them to go at it. And so going at it alone is never advised. So that's when you bring those other parties in, you lean on them, and you just start walking through the process. And you can explain it in 15 seconds, but it's a 6 to 9 month process. So it's a lot of ups and downs.
So I got a few tactical questions lined up, and I got a bunch on Instagram from my friends who have some questions for you. And ordinarily, actually, I was gonna have the let's dive into BizBuySell after, but just for the sake of maybe even having a case study, I'm gonna pull this up now. So Jordan's gonna share his screen. If you are listening to this on a podcast platform like Apple Podcast or Spotify, thank you. You can continue listening, but then I encourage you to go into YouTube because you'll actually see his screen. Jordan, if you want to back it up one time, we were on the listing website of BizBuySell in a certain area.
Oops. Are you seeing it still?
Yep, we got it there.
Cool.
All right, so what is this?
So this is BizBuySell. This is probably one of the more popular listing websites. There's another one called BizQuest. There's tons of them, but if you're thinking of like the main place, I would say BizBuySell is the number one. And so obviously, if you're looking for a particular industry, you're going to know what you're looking for, right? You can poke in your industries here. I just put service industries or service businesses in here, for example. But as you just kind of scroll through, something that I personally keep an eye on, before you start your search, you want to have an initial set of criteria, meaning what are you looking for? What's your price range? What is your goal? What do you want your roles and responsibilities to be going into this business? And so you should have some sort of idea of what you're looking for, not necessarily industry. I try and tell people it's not really all about what's the most popular industry, but what is a business that could fit what you're experienced in or what your skills are, along with over here on the right side where you'll see purchase price and cash flow. And so really what this is showing is obviously what's the price of the business, and the cash flow is just money coming in and money coming out. And the way BizBuySell represents this is the difference between money coming in and money coming out, or cash flow positive, essentially what the new buyer can expect to be left over for them, including salary, if that's how they have it advertised as well. And so I think the one that we had pulled up for an example, and the reason why I did pick this one after you scroll past all of these, was this one right here, this established scrapyard in Texas. And the reason why I picked it doesn't have a picture, which isn't good, but the reason why I picked it is because I try and look at, if you want to call quote unquote good businesses to buy, it's just thinking of, if you want to go recession proof, or what are people always going to need. And so I try and tell people, even something like a nail salon, right? If you put a nail salon in a good suburban area, you're going to have those same clients coming back every couple weeks. Or if you have a landscaping business, you need the grass always cut. So not really so much contracts or subscriptions, but just reoccurring customers are always good. And then something like this scrapyard, where there's always going to be junk and scrap that you need removed with whatever is going on. There's construction, people are moving. There's always going to be a need for this type of business. And so a business like this, I would say that's in a good service-based or service business industry. And so just a quick glance, and so people are aware, you don't get full access to all of the financials, the organizational chart. You can't look at customers or customer concentration or anything like that. This is all you get. And so if you want more information, over here on the right side, you have to fill out some information, hit send, and inquire on this deal. And what that does, it will send it off to the listing broker and say, hey, there's someone interested. And then you'll have to sign an NDA. And that's basically saying you're not going to share the sensitive information relating to this business. And so that's why they have it kind of gatekeep like this. But if you're going to initially look at this, you can see the asking price is $800,000, and it has a cash flow here of $200,000. So just off the bat, if I'm just trying to find something that's checking criteria just to inquire and keep moving on and maybe inquire in a few more, I would say this looks pretty good as an overview. Now the way businesses are valued are based off of a multiple of what they earn. So if you're going to take it off of this cash flow, which isn't an exact uh, reflection of their earnings. You'd want to look at their profit and loss statements, but you could say, okay, $200,000 is what can be left over paid to the new buyer. So you could say $200,000 times 4 is $800,000. So they're putting this around a 4 multiple. Small businesses usually sell anywhere from a 2 to a 4, 2 to a 5. Pretty safe spot, safe range. Unless earnings start getting around 500,000, usually a million is where it starts. That's when that multiple starts to get a little bit higher. So looking at this, looking at the cash flow, the industry, I would say it's priced pretty fair. And then you just want to read through the description, because for me, if I was looking at this, I don't know much about this industry. And so I would start to think one of two things. Do I know anybody who has experience in this industry that could help me out? Maybe I make them a 10% owner. Maybe I have them come on board in some capacity to help me with this business, because I don't know much about this. Or secondly, I'm trying to figure out how strong is their organizational chart, their employees. Is there a general manager? Is there a main operator? Is there someone who's running the operational side of the business? Ideally, what I would like to see is owner, not so much involved, maybe running back end books, maybe running sales, and then they have a general manager in place running the operations of the business. For me personally, that would fit, because like I said, I don't know too much about this industry. And that would be another thing, is why would you pursue an industry you don't know much about? So that's something to think about as well, because you have to keep in mind, you're going to be managing employees, and there's a weird dynamic of, if you don't know the industry, it might seem a little bit weird. And so I always say, if you know somebody, it looks better and it helps to bring that person in with experience. But yeah, I could go on and on about this, but just overall, it looks like a decent business that I would at least inquire on, and then take a look at the financials to see what's going on under the hood.
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously it's from media, the cookie cutter boring business, something that is always needed for sure. So let's just use this as an example. Say we want to buy this business. You're going into multiples of, you're saying that it could be worth anywhere between 2 and 5x of that net cash flow. How do you, obviously between 2 and 5 is a lot. That's from 400K to $1 million, which is a huge difference in price. How do you actually determine that?
So it's usually set by the way the listing broker, the seller's broker, will do it. They'll either do it in-house, and what I mean by do it, they'll run a valuation on the business, which is essentially appraising the business. So they'll run a valuation on the business, or they'll send it off to a third-party company to run the valuation on the business itself. And what's crazy is there's no, like for this, junk removal or scrapyard. There's no set, nope, it has to be a 2.4, and that's that. You pull in all different variables of whatever recent scrapyard businesses or junk removal businesses sold for. What are the assets of this business? What's the performance of the business? Is it trending upward over the past 3 years, or has it taken a dip? Is it stagnant? And so usually what I've noticed is that if it's ran in-house by the broker, they'll heavily weight probably the better performing year. And so what the standard or typical process is you look at the past 3 years, and you'll take usually an average of the past 3 years and apply a multiple to that average. Let's say if the last calendar year of this business was the best performing year, the business broker will probably run it in-house and weight that last year, just because it gives them a higher valuation. 2 to 5, like you said, it is a very wide range. If you want to narrow it down and be more specific, you're going to see probably right around a 3. That's probably more accurate, around a 3 multiple, and it can kind of go up and down from that depending on the earnings, depending on the performance of the business financially, assets, and then other intangibles, like I was mentioning, is how involved is the current business owner. Because this was a problem we saw all the time when trying to sell businesses, when it was so heavily relied on the business owner themselves. It made it very difficult to sell, because that means the buyer coming in needs to immediately fill those shoes, or hire an operator outside of that, which is going to cut into the bottom line. And so it's more attractive if the owner themselves is a little bit removed, has those key employees set in place. And that's an argument to raise the multiple even more. And when I see businesses like that, I don't bat an eye, because that's what I'm looking for. They've structured their business very well. And so go ahead, demand the high price. It makes sense,
Yeah. No, I mean, that's something good to know. It's as I compare it to, say, commercial real estate, right? As some similarities there, but I feel like, actually, I don't even know how many businesses, let's just say in Dallas, how many businesses trade in Dallas a year? Would you even be able to ballpark that?
I think I was looking at a BizBuySell report the other day. It's 10 to 20,000 maybe.
Wow.
I don't know if it's that much. I don't wanna
Okay.
speak. I think that was for the year.
Yeah.
But that's everything from a $200,000 business up into the millions of dollars, multi-millions of dollars. So it's all a whole wide range, that's being sold. I don't know if that's accurate. We should
Gotcha.
probably check that, but
All right. Well, that'll be to be continued. Yeah, because I think about,
yeah.
as as we're looking at the multifamily market in Dallas, you can kind of see, at least from a real estate perspective, what the cap rate is of what other similar asset sizes have traded for.
Yep.
And on a business side, it seems somewhat similar, but again, that 2 to 5 is super different.
I'll show
Um,
you something if we got 2
yeah,
seconds on. Can you still see my screen?
let me I pulled it up.
So BizBuySell they've got a lot of information on here. Um, so this is reports of previously sold businesses. And so as you can see here in the middle, if you can still see my screen, it says the average
Yeah,
cash flow earnings multiple. So this is the average multiple that was used for businesses in building and construction.
interesting.
Um, Finance services, 2.45, maybe a CPA firm sold, right? And then over here is obviously the median price of what it sold for. So, if you do the math here, these earnings are a little bit small. These are some smaller businesses. And so the
Yeah,
multiple makes sense to be slightly below a 3, right? But that one we just looked at had earnings of 200,000 with an asking price of 800. So it's bigger than all of these, and the multiple is a 4. And so that's a good example of how the multiple can kind of start to increase as the earnings start to increase. But BizBuySell reports all of these from already sold businesses, so it's not necessarily accurate to date because it's past performance.
yeah,
But it gives you a good idea of what businesses are selling for, what price range they're selling for. That way, if you come across anything, car washes, as you can see here, I'm sure you've heard all about buying and selling car washes. The
yep.
multiple is a 5 because, man, it's a hot demand right now. Everyone wants to get a car wash. And so the owners of that know that. And so they're putting a 5 multiple on these car washes and they're still selling them.
Is there
So
a
it gives
parking
you,
garage on there?
what's that? Yeah, yeah, parking garage. Let's see.
I've always wanted. Every single time I've parked in like downtown San Francisco, and I'm paying $80 for the day to park, and I said, man,
I
one of these
know.
days I'm gonna own a downtown parking garage and
It's
just
so smart.
print money.
I know. I don't see anything.
No, good.
That's a very good point, though. I mean, you spend how much money to park for an hour, and you're like, what just happened, right?
Yeah, yeah. Especially in major metros, it's crazy. Overhead's
Mhm.
low, maintenance is low.
Yeah.
Absentee owner for sure. You shouldn't be the one checking those tickets. Okay, so I'm ready to finance this business. What are the different ways that we can finance this junkyard?
Yep. Yep. So probably the main way is through an SBA loan.
Okay,
They'll lend up to $5 million. So if it's over $5 million, you just have to start looking at maybe conventional or bring in investors. That's usually what you'll see over that. But the SBA will allow you to put 10% of the purchase price as a down payment, and you can finance the other 90%.
okay,
You can get as creative as you want. That's probably the most traditional route of just going through the SBA, putting your down payment down, getting the loan. It's a 10-year term. It's usually 2 to 3 points above the current prime rate. Um, and then, there's creative ways of going about it. You can do seller financing. Getting 100% seller financing, very difficult to do, but you can at least ask for some of it. I think something that SBA recently approved, maybe last year or a few months back, you can use seller financing as part of your down payment. Now, I don't know any lenders. I've heard people say this, but I don't know any lenders that allow the full 10%. I know lenders that will allow 5%. So if you ask for 5% seller financing, you can use that as half of your 10%. So now you're putting 5% down on the business and carrying the other 90% for debt, and then paying the other 5 back to the seller. So I think probably the main route is going through the SBA as far as acquiring a business.
gotcha. Yeah, I mean, it seems like a lot of people are trying to buy these businesses, obviously, to replace their regular day job income, hopefully
Hmm.
from an absentee level. Is that actually realistic? Like, how many people are actually doing that?
Yeah, it's realistic. You got to know what you're looking for, and again, it's really all going to boil down to the organizational chart of the business you're looking at, right? And especially if you don't have any experience in that industry, you're going to need to lean on that team, and you're going to need to check that box with the SBA. The SBA, it requires you to have experience in the industry, whether it's this particular industry experience or, like I've said before, transferable management skills. So if you've been a manager somewhere, sales somewhere, and you can paint that picture in your business plan to check that box, you can do that. But yeah, everyone's looking for the business that I can buy and I don't have to touch it and make money. I would encourage you to look at it from a different angle of why would you not pay attention to it? Why wouldn't you want to be involved and grow the business, especially if your plan is to maybe exit in a few years? If you grow sales, you're growing your earnings, which you're increasing your multiple, which you're helping your exit. Meanwhile, the entire time you're building this business, this asset, it's paying you cash flow every single month. And so you have control over growing this business. And so sure, you can run it absentee. And I'm not saying you have to go work 40 hours a week in it, but why not be involved? Why not try and grow that thing as much as you possibly can? But yeah, to answer your question, there are businesses that you can be absentee from. I think you're going to be looking at probably a little bit more than $1 million, because that's when you start to see good structure in place at these businesses and the owner has removed themselves a little bit more. So that's when you'll see it. But if you're looking at a business where it's an owner operator business, well, the owner's operating it. So you're going to need to replace those shoes.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree, especially if you're thinking about that multiple return. If you are able to make a 30% increase of revenue, then if it's a 4 or 5x multiple, that's a lot more money you just made in terms of business value and equity for yourself.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay. What about in terms of, I guess, from a baseline, SBA loans, the requirements are you need some type of experience or be able to pitch yourself on why you can run that business. You need some liquidity, which I'm sure is just your normal liquidity requirements would be cash, retirements, something that you could move in to show that. Yep. What other requirements do you need?
So they're looking at credit score. Obviously, they like to see a 680 credit score or higher. Funds for the down payment, 10%. Liquidity can be a form of well, no, it needs to be liquidity. Sorry. So they look for like 8 to 10% post-close liquidity, meaning after you buy the deal, you have to send them a bank statement showing that you still have liquid funds in your bank account, just in case there's any hiccups with the business. They want to see that you can pull out of pocket if needed. Rarely it shouldn't happen. If you're vetting the business properly, it shouldn't happen. But they obviously want to make sure that they're getting their debt payments back.
Yeah.
So post-close liquidity. And then probably the most difficult part with applying with the SBA is you do have to write a business plan and you do have to send them financial projections for the future. So you have to demonstrate that you understand the business, you understand the industry, and you understand how to grow this business. And that's when you will fold in your experience of whether it's industry experience or transferable skills to this business experience into that business plan. And so it's not a quick, easy process. It is actually a lot. It's a big, huge packet you have to fill out. 3 years tax returns you have to send in, bank statements you have to send in, your resume you have to send in. And so they are really vetting you, but they're really making sure that you have an understanding of what you're buying. And then lastly, I think this is maybe the one positive thing of all I've said there is that the bank themselves will obviously underwrite this deal, whether they'll run it through themselves, and then they'll also send it off to a third-party valuation company. So it is a good way to have a bank check the business financially for you. So you should know all of this before you go apply, but they're going to do the underwriting and check if there's any red flags within the business financially, and making sure it debt services over a certain amount so that you can get their payments back to the bank. So it's a little reassuring knowing that they do that for anyone who gets a little worried of, am I getting something pulled over on me right now?
Okay. No, that's fair. Obviously, that's why you have business consultants like yourself or brokers to help you along the way and connect you with whoever you need. How about maybe to save you and any other business broker some grief? I'm sure there's a lot of tire kickers, just to be frank, right?
Yeah.
As they see it on YouTube, sounds like a really, really great idea. I want to go buy that laundromat now because I want that mailbox money. Who do you think is actually ready to buy a business, and how do you move more towards someone who ends up being a little bit more qualified at that moment?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think the statistics are something crazy, like 90% of people who are buyers never actually buy the business. And so it's a ton of tire kickers. I think the best thing for you to do is, first of all, you have to be realistic with yourself and sit down. And is this something you actually want to pursue? Meaning, are you willing to put in the time to manage the business if needed, to put out fires, to do whatever you need to do, hire people, fire people, whatever it is, right? So you have to put that time in there, and you have to be realistic with yourself if that's something you want to do. And then just make sure you're qualified for all of those things we just talked about with the SBA. If you're qualified for all of that and you're serious and you're motivated to get a deal done, just start putting the deal team in place around you, right? Make sure you have whether it's a consultant, an advisor, or hiring a business broker, and then make sure you have access to a CPA and access to a transactional attorney. And if you have those people around you, you're going to increase your odds of closing a deal because you have the support, you have the experts, and anything else that comes up along the way, it's probably just emotions, and there's a lot going on. And, I'm sure you are well aware too with investments yourself. There's a lot that goes on, especially as you get close to signing that piece of paper. And so I think if you can put all those things in place and look at the business for what it is, read the numbers for what they are, and then make your decision based off of the evidence in front of you, I think you'll have a higher chance of success.
Love it. I love it. That's very helpful tactical advice. Okay, so I want to jump into, I posted this on Instagram that I'm going to be interviewing you, and I got a ton of questions.
Love
So
it.
let's try and rapid fire through as many of these as we can. I'm going to go, I have Violin Gomez says, why should we answer that? How easy? Well, on a scale from 1 to 10, how would you say, like, from an SBA loan perspective, like, as long as you check the boxes, you should be able to get financing, right?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, the business plan and the projections are probably going to be the most difficult part for an individual because they do take it seriously. They sit down and they read your business plan, and within that business plan, you have to show again that you understand the industry. You are mapping out a plan of, this is how I'm going to grow it because this is where the profit margins are now, and I think I can take it to here because I'm going to cut this or improve this. And so you're putting all of that together, and so that's a difficult part of the application process. Probably good to maybe outsource that or ask for help if you need to. But if you meet the qualifications, there's no reason you shouldn't be able to get an SBA loan if you can check all those boxes.
Yeah, there actually seems to be quite a few financing questions. Looks like we'll stick to there for a second. This is from Mela. And is there income-based loans? Are there any alternatives other than SBA loans as well, I guess, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, you can just go the conventional route if you want. I think the SBA is probably the best way to go and the most popular way to go. You can try and work in some seller financing, but I mean, 9 out of 10 times you're going to use an SBA loan.
Okay. This is from Edward. What are the top reasons that businesses are being sold?
The top reasons they are being sold?
Yeah.
Well, I think you've got a lot of it to do with I'm sure everyone's seen the posts about the baby boomer generation. And I think you're seeing a lot of these people who don't have a succession plan with kids below them or employees who want to take it over. And I think you'd be very surprised that a lot of these people, 1, don't know they can sell their business, or 2, don't know what to do. And so they contemplate closing the doors. So I think this baby boomer generation getting close to retirement is a big reason why there's so many listings and why there's so many people selling their business. But, sometimes people's health get in the way. Sometimes people want to go pursue something else. Sometimes individuals want to just cash out. And so there's all kinds of reasons for why they'd want to sell. I get that question of, why would you sell something that's making you money, right? And sometimes the answer is just life, right? And you want a chunk of cash to go pursue something else, or your health is declining, or you just want to go relax now. You're done. You've built it and you want to sell it and be done. So there's all kinds of reasons.
No, that's fair. Okay, the next few questions here looks like it's about Proformas and financial modeling. Mm-hmm. I guess, what is your favorite resource there? If someone wants to learn how to actually start to run numbers for themselves, at least from a quick back of the napkin to then obviously more in depth, what do you usually recommend?
I don't really use any softwares. I use my pen and my notebook actually, but okay. I think the best thing to do would be first just understanding the numbers, the profit and loss, how to calculate what the actual earnings of the business is, how to calculate what add backs are, any expenses that aren't pertaining to the business. When business owners take travel or take clients out to dinner, you can add a lot of that back to the bottom line. and then applying your multiple from that. And so that's how I play around with numbers. I'll run through a profit and loss sheet, and then I'll add back the add backs and just play around with the numbers there. But I mean, a good way to learn is just looking at a business, call a CPA and say, hey, I want to go over these numbers with you. But as far as modeling deal calculators, it's crazy to say, but I just do it the old fashioned way with my calculator on my phone and running numbers on making my own spreadsheet or something.
Okay. Do you have a spreadsheet template by any chance?
I don't, but I can make one. I keep getting the requests. It seems like a lot of people want it, so it's probably a good idea.
All right, so that's coming soon then. We'll say that.
Yeah, there you go.
How about let's go, Jordan, you want to play dictionary for me for a second? There's a few different words here that I've seen throughout that I'm sure are very industry specific to buying and selling businesses. Like, for example, add back. I've never heard that before. What is that?
So an add back is any sort of expense that doesn't pertain to the business. It's not necessary for the business to function, if you will.
Okay.
A lot of add backs could be personal add backs, meaning that the business owner is running personal expenses through the business, like their car or their cell phone. If I'm going to buy that business, you can't assume that I'm going to run my car and my personal cell phone through the business. You can't assume that if you owned the business, Joshua, and you took clients out for meals and you spent $5,000 on meals and entertainment a year, can't assume that I'm going to do that. And so all of those expenses, you can add them back to the bottom line, which increases your bottom line, which increases your purchase price. So it is beneficial to find those if you are a seller. But they're just expenses that don't pertain to the function of the business.
Okay, fair. Customer count and customer concentration.
Customer count, did you say?
Yeah, I'm just looking at a random list here.
Customer concentration would be breaking down the number of customers a business has and what percentage of revenue they bring to the business. And so if you have a customer concentration of, first of all, I would say if you're going to look at buying a business, you want the customer concentration of that business and target to be 15 to 20% or lower. Because let's say you have a customer concentration of client number 4 makes up 44% of revenue, right? So you can just kind of think of it like that. Now, what if customer number 4, they leave after I buy the business because maybe they don't like me or they like the old business owner, whatever, right? I just lost 44% of revenue. And so that is a really important thing to look at when you're looking at a business is the lower the customer concentration, the better. And really all it is just the percentage of revenue that this customer brings in for the business.
Gotcha. Okay. And there's what about like EBITDA, and what are other terms around EBITDA?
Yep. EBITDA is your earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, amortization. Honestly, it's like that, and seller discretionary earnings, net operating income, cash flow. They're all metrics of measuring the earnings of the business. Seller discretionary earnings is probably the popular one for smaller businesses. You start to see EBITDA for maybe the middle market and larger businesses. But it's just a way, I think EBITDA was created for, it's a way to compare businesses' profitability without incorporating the particular interest that business has to pay or taxes or anything like that. It's just the actual performance of the business.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. This one's from Brian. What are the key differences when taking over a mom and pop business versus a franchise type?
Differences is with a franchise. The best way I could explain it is if you want to buy a franchise, you are going to have back-end support, but you're going to give up a little control. And what I mean by that is that you own the business, but you can't really implement your own strategies, whether it's marketing or a new product. It has to get run up the ladder. And so you give up some control with a franchise, but you also have the back-end support and you have the brand recognition. And then one thing to keep in mind with franchises is you have to pay some sort of franchise fee, whether it's to get into the business or you're paying a % of royalties on sales every month. That's why I kind of lean away from franchises. But if you want that support, they're great to go into. And then with the mom and pop businesses, it's all on you. You've got full control and you've got the right to implement new ideas or strategies or marketing, whatever it is. But the marketing and the back end support, that's also on you. So that would be probably the main difference for me is you have more support with the franchise, but a little bit less control.
That's helpful. Another one from Ryan is, how do you ensure that a broker has the buyer's best interest at heart? Or better yet, how do you identify a good broker from a bad one?
Yeah, it's a really good question. It's part of the reason I left the industry, honestly, because I mean, a good broker is worth his weight in gold. But a lot of these guys, they'll push sometimes. And so I guess, because you got to keep in mind, brokers are performance based, kind of like real estate, and they'll get a percentage of the deal. Some of these guys will close a couple deals in the beginning of the year and just kind of coast for the rest of the year because they'll make a couple six figures and they're comfortable, and that's that. And so they might not push or work as hard for you. The best thing I would say, honestly, is call several brokers. If you want to hire a broker, call several of them, vet them, ask what their prices are, compare their fees, and ultimately trust your gut. I'm sure the initial conversation is going to be, they're going to put their best foot forward to get a client, but just trust your gut and the way they operate and they talk. And if they say they can do absolutely everything for you, it's a little concerning. When someone wants to sell their business and they're vetting brokers, it's even more scary, if you will, because yes, I can sell your business. Of course, I can get the top dollar. Of course, no problem. We'll get it sold. This, and this. When reality is, what's the actual valuation of the business? Is it actually worth that amount, or is the market buying businesses in this industry right now? You know what I mean? And so, if they're not shooting you straight and just telling you what you want to hear, that's usually, I mean, that's just life in general too. But just trust your gut and talk to several of them and pick one from there.
Okay. How do you even find brokers?
Yeah, that's a good question too. Just honestly, Google business broker near me. They go by business brokers. There's a lot of big firms, Transworld, Sunbelt. There's a lot of big names that are out there. But yeah, if you just Google business broker near me, I think working with more of a boutique firm is probably better because they'll probably fight for you a little bit more.
Okay. And what's the expected commissions from a range that you can expect to pay?
Yeah, it depends. I would say, I mean, usually if you're going to hire a buy side broker, it's all different. Some of them will do a flat fee up front. Some of them will do a fee up front and then a monthly retainer, or they'll do a fee up front and then a percentage of sales. And then I've also seen monthly retainer, credit it back on the day of sale, but then a percentage of the business. And so they all structure it. I know they all structure it differently. I would say 5% of the purchase price. Keep that. That would probably be around that number is fair.
Okay. For buying a business side.
Depends. Yeah. For selling, for sure. For selling, they can use a double Lehman scale, or it's probably going to be around 4 or 5. I mean, I see people go up to 8% as well, 10% if it's a smaller sized business. The buy side, I think that's when you need to call around, because not a lot of brokers do buy side, because that means they have to go out and do the initial search for you. It's a lot of time for them. So they might charge you a monthly retainer, maybe $2,000, $3,000 a month. And then you might get it credited back and have to pay them 2% of the purchase price or something. So the buy side's a little bit more different. But if you just say, hey, I'm going to buy $1 million business, take 5% of that, that might be a ballpark of what you can expect to pay.
Okay. Good to know. What is the expectations for the seller as you are buying a business? Like, what can you expect the seller to do in that transaction?
When you're buying a business?
Yeah.
Well, you won't have much interaction with the actual seller. A lot of the communication will be done through the broker. You will have a buyer and seller introduction call, and that usually goes for about an hour, whether it's in person or through a Zoom or something. And so that's when you'll really get to meet them and see if there's any synergies or connections with the two of you. Expectations with the seller, I think, is just acting in good faith, and you want to exchange documents as quickly as possible, especially when you move into that due diligence phase. Because if something gets delayed a day, it usually ends up adding a week or 2 weeks into the entire process. And so the seller usually lets their broker handle a lot of this until it gets down to the due diligence period, is when the seller has to print different forms, financial forms, and send over these documents and things like that. So it's usually mainly with the broker.
And then is the process similar to, say, buying commercial real estate, to where there's like a letter of intent period where you are soliciting offers, and then you have some best and final round, and then you pick one offer that you sign on, and then now you're moving forward with that group to buy the business? Is that similar? Or how
Yep,
does it
very
work?
similar. Yep, very similar, depending on how much interest the business gets.
Okay.
If you're the seller, ideally you would want to get several LOIs in at once. When I was doing the business brokerage, if it was a popular business, you would do exactly what you just said, is say, hey, we're doing a final round, we're accepting LOIs up until this date, we have a lot of interest, get your letter of intents in, and then from there the seller will pick one, and usually get the buyer will get exclusivity once that LOI is executed to start due diligence. So it's not that all the other buyers go away. It's just they now take a back seat until this one pans out, whether it closes or not. But very similar process, yeah.
Okay. Is there any situation where you would recommend someone to rent a business versus own it?
To rent a business?
Yeah, have you ever heard of that before?
I don't know if I have, honestly.
Okay.
I don't know if you can. Can you do that? I've never heard of that.
I don't know. Leave it to Instagram for fun questions, you know?
Yeah, yeah. No, I don't know. I mean, because the way I imagine that is, I mean, that you can maybe say that's seller financing,
Yeah.
100% seller financing where you're paying the seller directly monthly. But yeah, that'll be it. Outside of that I don't see how that would work. But I don't know.
Okay.
Maybe there's something I don't know about.
Okay. We are working on a 44-bed assisted living facility. Um, I'm going to ask a question again. So have you ever worked on an assisted living deal before?
Nope, not an assisted living, but it is a great industry, and I've had a lot of people ask me about it. And I really like them because, I mean, they're not going anywhere, right?
Yeah, I mean, everyone's getting older.
Yeah.
Everyone's going to need more care.
Well,
And
again,
possibly,
and we talked about this too, the baby boomer generation. They're starting to retire, and I'm not trying to get morbid, but they're starting to retire, and then after retirement, you get a little bit older, and so there's a huge wave coming through right now. So it's a very good industry. Yeah.
are those on BizBuySell too, or is that more of a real estate play?
It's a little bit of both. I've seen them on BizBuySell. Yep, they'll
Okay.
list them on there.
Okay.
They go quick though. You don't see them hanging around on page 2 or page 3. They usually, if a broker gets a listing like that, they've got their network of buyers that they're probably going to call off market.
Aside from buying businesses, right? But like my assisted living content, when I've started to interview a bunch more people who operate them, those are the ones that generally started to pop off more
Mm-hmm.
recently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Um,
it's a really good industry, really good market. I just think a really good idea to pursue those. And real quick, I know we showed that business or that biz buy sell page of the multiples
yeah.
of what multiple range. I looked at that the other day, and the reason why I brought that up is because I did see, I think assisted living was on there, something in that category of selling for around a multiple of 5, which tells you that's just where the demand is right now in the hot industry.
Well, let's pivot now. I want to get a little bit more into kind of your growth on posting and social media.
Yeah.
What's been the most viral post you've made so far?
I made a post about, I do a lot of deal reviews on my page, like we did with the Biz Buy Sell here. I made a post about a business that I didn't like, and I basically said I wouldn't do this deal because of X, Y, and Z. And that caught a lot of traction. For me, it was a lot of views. I think it was 500,000 views, maybe 600,000, and uh, very funny to read through the comments on that. But yeah, that was probably my most viral post.
Yeah, I feel like especially when they're short clips, it's not a full story, obviously. You're under, a minute or 2 minutes at the most. You can't get the full story, and so you have
It's something I'm trying to work on. I was telling you, I listen to a lot of podcasts,
yeah.
of educational and this and that, and I hear all these people talk about you can't engage in the comments and do this and do that, but it is interesting because it is what's a reel, 90 seconds, 60 to 90 seconds, and like I told you about the biz buy sell, you can't share the financials, and so therefore I don't sign NDA, so I can just get a very high level review, and the second I hit post, I give it a few minutes, and all of a sudden the financial experts fall from the sky, and it's like, hey, I get it, I get what you're saying, I missed this and I missed that, but I can't look at the business or else that would be a breach of that NDA contract. But it's just something I'm personally working on, is getting out of the comments a little bit.
That's it'll never happen. You just get more numb to it, I think.
I think you're right. Yep, I think you're right.
And ultimately, you want more hate comments because that means that you're getting a bigger audience.
You're right. That's what I'm trying to tell myself every day. I think you're right.
So then what is your plan with social media, and what's the ultimate goal with it?
I think I just want to keep pumping very educational and valuable content, which seems to be what is the reason why it is growing. I think is hopefully it's helpful. And my plan is to keep doing that. My plan is to keep driving Instagram. I don't really post on many other platforms right now, but I plan to keep driving Instagram. And then I would like to move over into YouTube and make longer form educational breakdowns of deals or breakdowns of the process, just to really get that the process out, the information out there, and the education out there. And so that's the long term goal, is to start transitioning into more of the longer form educational content.
And then for you as a consultant side, what is, I guess, what type of business do you want to focus on the most? Is it referring out to other listings or finding, people who want to buy businesses? Like what clientele do you want to focus on?
Um, I'm looking for people who really want to buy businesses, obviously, who are motivated and who are qualified, first of all, to buy a business. But I speak with a lot of really successful people, some ex-athletes that have this money and don't know what to do, and they want to park it I shouldn't say park it somewhere, but they want to put it in somewhere where it's going to obviously work for them.
Yeah.
And so I want to work with people like that who want to start turning, you know, 6 figures into seven into eight, or whatever it is. Right. And so the hungry, ambitious people, those are the people that I really jive with, and I want to help. And if I've got the information for an investment strategy, then let me help you do it. Let's go.
Okay. Are you on TikTok yet?
I'm not. I should,
Oh,
but I'm not.
why?
I know. I know. I don't know. I got on there when it first came out, and next thing I know, it was 3 a.m. I go, I gotta delete this app. So that was
Well,
my
that's
thing.
more reason for you to keep the app.
I know. It's exactly it. And I could probably transfer all the Instagram reels right over to TikTok, anyways.
You
Yeah,
should.
you're
You
right.
should.
You're right. Yeah, I
So
know.
then what is that sales process like for you right now? Like as people are discovering you now a lot more recently on social media. That's how I found you, was on
Mhm.
Instagram. What's the customer journey like now for them? Do they go on and book a call with you, or?
Yep. So I'm pretty much done. I just spent the last several months building out an educational course on it, so someone can go
Mm,
through that and learn the process from A to Z. And I put LOI templates in there, and business plan templates, and projection templates. So the educational course is for people who want to understand how to do this, and then take a stab at doing it as well, because all the tools and the information will be in there. So hopefully that'll be wrapped up in the next few days, where people can go through that. And then I have my consulting group, where it's for a very tight knit group, small group of people, where it'll be more deal specific. And so if we like that scrapyard, if you were part of the consulting group and you said, let's look at this deal, we'll actually inquire on it. We'll look at the P&Ls, and we'll take a look at the business packet as a whole, and just helping people get all the way to the closing seat, for a deal. And so the consulting thing is a really big one. It's more hands-on, obviously.
okay. Well, that makes a lot of sense. I'm excited for that YouTube channel, by the way. I think it's going to do
I
great.
know. I know. I appreciate that. I'm excited to start that as well.
Well, Joe, you mentioned a few different things, but how can people find you?
Mainly Instagram. It's Jordan _ Kelliher. Mainly Instagram, and then I'm hoping to start tapping into YouTube. I got a couple of videos on there, but nothing too wild.
Okay.
Pretty much Instagram is where I'm at.
Okay, well, I'll leave all of that linked down below in the show notes. The last question I have for you, we'll call this my last call section, but what has been one conversation, one meal, one drink, one relationship that has unlocked a new level of business for you?
That's a really good question. Um, Honestly, it's something very, very brief. And it was, I think when I was like 18 or something, I took a digital marketing course to try and learn. Like, again, I told you, I grew up with no money, trying to find ways to make money, right? And so I took a digital marketing course, and one of the guys teaching it couldn't have been much older than me at the time, which is crazy. But he just said something, guys, the work you put in now will show up 6 months down the line. And for some reason, that has just always stuck with me. And so I think that just ties into the delayed gratification aspect of life in general. Is if you're going to put in a long day of work, or you're going to pursue something, you can't immediately expect a result tomorrow, or even in a month, or even in 5 months. It's going to be later on down the line. And so I've really tried to, use that with the work and the output that I do with my own life. Is just, okay, we're going to focus and work on this, and we're not going to really see much from it until maybe 6 months. Whether it happens sooner or later, it just puts me at ease a little bit more, knowing, yeah, I'm not expecting a result right now. It's coming in 6 months. And so for some reason that always stuck with me, and I really liked it.
Yeah, I mean, you have to plant your seeds wherever you're going. If it's on YouTube, your
Yeah.
video doesn't pop off in the first month. Sometimes 6 months later, it'll get 100,000 views, and it's weird. So
Exactly. You're exactly
you never
right.
know.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Well, Jordan, thank you so much. This was like a complete masterclass, like buying a business 101. Obviously, if you are serious about buying a business, go like and subscribe all of Jordan's his stuff after obviously you like and subscribe on this video too. But Jordan, I appreciate you jumping on, man. It's been great.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. That was a lot of fun. Honestly, that was a lot of fun. So thank you.